Okay, let's get into this. We've pulled together a fantastic stack of sources. We're talking legal rulings, forgotten newspaper clippings, even some internal government notes. And they all center on one single pivotal year,
Hmm.
1903.
Hmm.
Our mission today is to do a deep dive into this year, which, often gets dismissed as this quiet little transition period.
Right, between the Victorian era and the modern world.
Exactly. But what we found is that 1903 is anything but quiet. It was the moment the U.S. asserted itself globally with shocking, aggressive force.
While at the same time grappling with these deep, sometimes really violent domestic contradictions.
It's the year America officially changed its relationship with the rest of the world and, well, with gravity itself.
That's the perfect lens for this. If you put 1903 into context, you realize it sits squarely in the middle of the progressive era.
Right.
And this is a period defined by rapid, often chaotic urbanization, massive industrial expansion, and crucially, the forceful executive action of President Theodore Roosevelt. TR was the catalyst for so much of what we see in the sources.
So if you look at the headlines from that year, you can almost group them.
You can. Three core tensions really define the entire landscape. First, there's this tension between imperial ambition and domestic reform.
Okay.
Second, progress versus peril. The catastrophic cost of modernization. And finally, and this one is fascinating, the tension between the known crisis that dominated the news and the unknown breakthroughs that the press completely missed.
Let's start right there with imperial ambition, because 1903 is the year TR truly flexed America's muscles on the world stage.
Oh, yeah.
And the centerpiece of that display was the Panama Canal Zone. Its big stick diplomacy made manifest.
It absolutely is. It set the definitive tone for America as a global 20th century power.
What's so fascinating here is how quickly it all happened. The diplomatic failure just turned into strategic aggression almost overnight.
Well, TR wanted that canal for crucial reasons. He needed faster naval mobility after the Spanish-American War to project U.S. power.
But Colombia stood in the way.
They did. The Colombian Senate rejected the Hay-Huron Treaty, which the U.S. Senate had already ratified in March, so suddenly the whole project was in crisis.
And TR's response was, it was breathtakingly quick and brutal.
No negotiation.
No. Instead, the U.S. tacitly supported Panama's declaration of independence from Colombia on November 3rd, 1903.
And it wasn't just a political endorsement. This was a decisive demonstration of U.S. regional police power. We essentially created a new nation to get what we wanted.
And the speed of the follow-up is what's really staggering. Just 15 days after Panama declared independence.
15 days.
On November 18th, the Hay-Buno-Varilla Treaty was signed.
And that's the deal.
That is the deal. The one where the U.S. received control over a 10-mile-wide strip of land?
In perpetuity.
Right, in perpetuity.
And that phrase, in perpetuity, is so critical. The U.S. agreed to pay $10 million and an annual rental fee of $250,000 to the New Panama.
But the real prize was that control.
Absolute, unending control. And that unilateral assertion, that idea that the U.S. could permanently own a piece of another nation's core territory, it immediately turned the strategic victory into a massive diplomatic liability.
It really codified a sort of American arrogance, didn't it?
It did. It fueled resentment throughout Latin America for decades, long after 1903.
And we see TR demonstrating this posture earlier in the year, too. This wasn't a one-off.
Absolutely not. The geopolitical stage is being set. Back in February, Cuba leased Guantanamo Bay to the U.S. for strategic purposes.
Right.
So you put that together with the aggressive seizure of the Canal Zone rights, and it sends a clear, unmistakable message to the region. The U.S. is going to enforce its dominance, sovereignty be damned.
So we have the U.S. asserting itself internationally, acting like a global policeman willing to steamroll national sovereignty. But when we swing the focus back home, we find this deep and fascinating contradiction, the progressive paradox.
That's a great way to put it. The federal government was expanding its regulatory muscle to protect consumers,
while at the same time shrinking the legal rights of huge populations.
It's what's so fascinating about 1903. TR's trust-busting efforts weren't just, rhetoric. They became institutional.
The progressive movement built a real infrastructure for federal power.
Exactly.
And that drive to regulate massive corporate monopolies took concrete form with the founding of the Department of Commerce and Labor on February 14th.
And the key component within that department was the Bureau of Corporations. Our sources highlight that this was it was the first purely investigative agency dedicated solely to gathering information.
The intelligence, basically.
The necessary intelligence to prosecute corporate monopolies under the Sherman Antitrust Act. It signaled a major, necessary expansion of the federal government's protective role.
It's the birth of the federal regulator as we know it today. Yet, at the same time, while the government was expanding its power to protect consumers from trusts, the Supreme Court was using that same federal power to systematically undermine Native American rights.
And that's the paradox in sharp relief. The question becomes, who exactly is the progressive era for?
Right.
On January 5, 1903, the Supreme Court ruled in a catastrophic case called Lone Wolf v. Hitchcock.
Can you walk us through what that ruling actually meant for the tribes?
It was devastating because it enshrined the concept of Congress's plenary power.
Plenary power.
Meaning absolute unilateral authority. The court affirmed that Congress could, at any time, break or modify existing treaties with Native American tribes, in this case the Kiowa, Comanche, and Apache, without their consent.
So it's a complete erasure of treaty law.
It was. The ruling held that Native Americans were merely wards of the nation and therefore had no legal recourse against the government violating those agreements.
Wow.
It effectively stripped tribes of legal standing and legitimized the massive systematic land loss that was already underway, and it accelerated it dramatically.
So you have the federal government as both benevolent regulator and supreme legal authority enabling mass land seizure all at once.
That tension is just profound.
And even within the social struggles, we see that same volatility. You have these beautiful, inspiring moments of unity, like the Oxnard strike in California.
February 1903.
That was the first successful interracial labor union in U.S. history. It brought together Japanese and Mexican agricultural workers to win their demands. Marginalized communities finding power.
But then you contrast that powerful unity with the state-sanctioned violence later that year.
In Colorado.
Right. In November, the Colorado governor sent the state militia to Cripple Creek to break up a miners' strike. It shows just how explosive that environment was. Unity was met with immediate, violent resistance.
It's not just conflict, though. 1903 also gives us these critical social milestones, these quiet breakthroughs, like Maggie O. Walker.
A huge story.
On November 2nd, she became the first African-American woman to charter a bank. She was building economic power from the ground up, a vital act of self-determination.
And you can see the foundational shifts in labor itself. The sources note, the first group of Korean immigrants, 102 people, arrived in Hawaii on January 13th.
And how was that reported?
Local papers at the time described them as a possible solution for the problem of labor on plantations. You see the forces of immigration being driven by industrial need, shaping the future face of the country in real time.
Which brings us perfectly to that second major tension, progress versus peril. All that industrial expansion, all that rapid urbanization that was celebrated, it led to catastrophic failures of safety and regulation.
And no headline that year dominated domestic consciousness more completely or terrified the public more than the Iroquois Theater fire in Chicago.
December 30th, 1903. The Iroquois was a brand new, lavish venue, and it was marketed aggressively to the public as
Absolutely fireproof.
absolutely fireproof. The irony is just heartbreaking.
Over 600 people died. It was the single deadliest theater fire in U.S. history. And the scale of that death toll forced the public to confront the horrifying reality that modernization often meant cutting safety corners for profit.
What strikes me in the sources are the specific, awful details of the negligence. Blocked fire exits, no alarms, and crucially, doors that were designed to swing inward.
Inward, not outward. So when the stampede began in the dark, the crush of the crowd physically prevented the doors from opening.
People were trapped by their own panic.
Exactly. Sources estimate more than 200 people died crammed into one single passageway. The public horror was so immediate and so intense that it forced swift regulatory action.
So this terrible peril actually drove lasting progress.
Undeniably, the legacy of the Iroquois was the immediate tightening of building codes nationwide. Cities began mandating clearly marked exits and, most importantly, requiring all public doors to swing outward.
And the panic bar.
The fire also led to the widespread adoption of the panic bar, that metal bar on emergency exits. It was an invention that existed, but this disaster made it a mandatory standard.
It's just incredible to think about this massive, preventable tragedy happening in the same month as a great triumph of American engineering, the Williams Bridge connecting Manhattan and Brooklyn.
Triumph and tragedy, side by side. It perfectly summarizes the age.
But now we hit the third, and I think most fascinating tension of 1903, known crisis versus unknown breakthrough.
The quiet revolution.
While the media was obsessed with the Iroquois death toll and TR's political drama, the greatest revolution of the year was completely ignored.
It speaks volumes about journalistic priorities back then. They were looking for spectacle, not substance.
The flight that wasn't a headline. We're talking, of course, about the Wright brothers' first successful, controlled, powered flight on December 17th, 1903 at Kitty Hawk.
12 seconds.
Orville flew for 12 seconds, covering 120 feet, an event that would reshape everything: global travel, warfare, commerce.
And yet, the media reaction was, well, it was minimal, skeptical, and wildly inaccurate. It's almost a failure of imagination.
It's more than just skepticism. I mean, the brothers were publicity shy, yes, but the journalistic establishment simply refused to believe it. The local Dayton newspaper ran a headline, "Dayton Boys Fly Airship," but then claimed the flight covered 3 miles and just invented details. Orville Wright later said that the report was 99% wrong.
And here's the most telling detail. An Associated Press representative refused to run the story at all.
Why?
Because he didn't find the flights newsworthy.
Newsworthy.
The journalistic machine just wasn't equipped to report on an abstract revolutionary change that happened far away from a city without any, immediate dramatic fanfare. They missed the forest for the trees because the trees weren't on fire.
And that technological myopia extended to other major breakthroughs that year.
Absolutely. In December 1903, Marie and Pierre Curie shared the Nobel Prize in Physics for their groundbreaking work on radioactivity.
They were unlocking the secrets of the atomic age.
But the press was busy listing theater casualties. They couldn't visualize the abstract future.
And then there's the utterly mundane yet essential innovation that was also dismissed, the windshield wiper.
Right. Mary Anderson patented the windshield wiper on November 10, 1903. She tried to sell the patent, but a Canadian firm famously refused her.
What was their reason?
They said the device had no practical value.
No practical value. It's laughable now, but she never profited from it, even though they were standard on cars within a decade.
It shows how quickly the public imagination and the investment market could dismiss the very things that would eventually define modernity.
And speaking of modernity, while people were focused on all that, the foundation of the auto age was being poured. Henry Ford and some other stockholders signed the official incorporation paperwork for the Ford Motor Company in June.
And they took their first order in July. A Chicago dentist named Ernst Fenning bought an $850 Model A.
So the age of the car, the age of flight, the age of radiation, all quietly, almost secretly being born.
It's a snapshot of a country in high-speed motion, fundamentally reorganizing itself.
Before we wrap up, we have to touch on the cultural side of this reorganization. Amidst all this international asserting and legal battling, Americans were also defining their leisure time.
These new pastimes and products were kind of a psychological safety valve for a volatile era.
That's a great way of putting it. Think about the first professional baseball World Series game. October 1st, 1903, in Boston.
Pittsburgh Pirates versus the Boston Americans.
The competition, the structure, it's the codification of America's game.
And in that very first game, a Pirates right fielder, Jimmy Sebring, hit the first World Series home run, an inside-the-park shot.
So he set the first benchmark.
He did. The Boston Americans ended up winning the series, but a permanent fixture in the American consciousness was born.
And the consumer icons we still recognize today start to appear. The first teddy bear, named after TR himself, went on sale in February.
And in a classic display of industrial standardization and marketing, the first box of Crayola crayons was made and sold for a nickel, 8 colors.
Transforming how children played and how people consumed.
And finally, a clear signal of changing social structures. The Martha Washington Hotel opened in New York City in March.
The first hotel exclusively for women.
You see the physical landscape, industrial capacity, and social expectations all fundamentally reorganizing at the same time.
So let's quickly revisit 1903. This was the year America aggressively asserted global power with the Canal Zone.
The year domestic peril forced lasting regulatory change after the Iroquois fire.
And the year we cemented our national pastimes while the seeds of revolutionary technology were quietly being sown.
What the records show us is a profound disconnect between media priorities and long-term historical impact. The press was obsessed with political drama and immediate human tragedy.
Spectacle over substance.
Exactly. The airplane, the wiper, the Nobel-winning radioactivity, these were the true revolutions that went largely unseen and unreported.
That failure of the media around the Wright flight was profound. and the source material reveals that the first accurate report of the flight appeared months later, and it wasn't in the New York Times.
Not even close.
It appeared in an obscure niche publication, a beekeeping journal called Gleanings in Bee Culture.
So think about this.
No.
What does it tell you about the nature of information, expertise, and credibility at the dawn of the 20th century, an era before modern mass communication, that the single most transformative news of the age was first reliably reported by a source focused on bees? That's a provocative thought for you to chew on as you go about your day.